All right, Doc, we should be live right now.
Peace.
Let me see what's going on with the family. Let everybody fill in the chat
Let
room.
everybody, yeah.
Doc, man, it's good to have you on the live, my brother.
Yeah, man, I already know, man. I already know. You know, it's much love.
Oh, give me one second. This come, hold up. Yeah, man, I'm so used to seeing you, Urban X, with your son. You're doing your thing, man. If it's good what y'all doing. I'm gonna
much
tell
appreciated.
Somebody that is a new father in this game. Very inspiring to see that. Very inspiring, Doc.
Well, that was the goal initially, because a lot of what you see is just conversations we're having out loud. And once my son told me he wanted to pursue communications, be an author, be a journalist, I was like, well, okay, well, let's do it. You know what I mean?
You know, when I first seen you do the podcast with your son, in a way, it just looks so dope, so together, so professional. I didn't know, it looked foreign to me. I'm gonna tell you, I'll be honest, the best word I could think of is foreign or alien. Maybe I should say alien. Coming from being raised by my mother, a single parent household, being raised by my mother. And then my whole crew, like pretty much none of us had dads. So it was like,
right.
To see that shit, I'm like, I didn't know how to feel about Malcolm. Like, yo, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, that's how life is right there. But it's just, it's paradigm changing, and it's dope to see that, man. I wish y'all none but the best, Doc.
Much appreciated. And we can change this in one generation.
Yeah.
So now that you're a young father, that's part of the reason I sat down and did that little piece for you and my other man, Rich, so that you guys can understand what this is about to be. And it is a great thing in one generation, because my pops wasn't there either. I knew him, but he wasn't around. So, you know, we got to do what we got to do.
Exactly, Doc. Family, I'm getting ready to do a show with your son soon too about his book, right?
Yes. That's probably be right after the new year. I got his book here with me. You know, I got a plug. Right. You know what I mean? But yeah, right after the new year, we'll come down to your studio and sit down and chop it up. I'll let him do all the talk, and I'll just be there to, you know, facilitate and support, you know?
Real quick, family, I want to thank everybody. Me and Doc just kicking it real quick while y'all coming to the chat room. We about to get it in. I'm actually going to have a double header tonight. I'm getting ready to do the show with Dot. And then right after Dot, we're probably going to end 10:45. And then we're going to come in, me, Red Pill, Blue Pill, Black Dot, and Sarnetta. Now, we're doing a decade in review, consciousness in review for the past decade. What's interesting and why I set the show up like this, is 4 different platforms that came in 2010, this decade. Moon Productions, that's Black Dot. House of Consciousness, that's Sarnetta. Underground Railroad, that's me. And Know the Ledge, that's Red and Blue. So it was 4 different platforms that came into the decade. Black Dot transitioned to what is now Urban. Is that your son or is that yours as well, Dot?
That's really my son. This is my son's platform, Urban X.
Okay. But it's going to be dope getting 4 different perspectives on where the decade went in terms of consciousness. But that is at 11 o'clock, family. But for now, Dot, I want to hear, let's talk about when we see consciousness and we see brothers like Umar Johnson just on the Breakfast Club. We see where that brother took it. We see where other brothers took it. I want to get what was going on before I came on the scene, or when I first came on the scene, or just pre-YouTube, pre-Blog Talk Radio. This is like VHS era type information. I talked to Sarnetta a couple of weeks ago. He gave me his take on it from a Harlem perspective. I want to know what was going on where you was at in terms of what we now call the so-called conscious community, Black Dot.
Yeah, peace to the family. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity. I'm gonna start with Sister Bert. I'm gonna start with Brother Big Man. I'm gonna start with Brother Leon. I'm gonna start with Brother Azariah. These were the cornerstones of a very small community. I came on a scene in 95. So this was a very small community where, like you said, there was no other communication but to be present or get a VHS tape. So when I showed up on the scene, the one glaring thing that I noticed, there weren't a lot of young people. You know what I mean? These were a lot of elders who were getting this information. And I was fascinated because the very first tape I heard was the Bobby Hemmett, and it was a cassette tape, you know? So we talking VHS, the audios were on cassette, and it was called the Egyptian Mystery System. And Azariah became my plug, all right?
What year was this?
This was 95, 96. Wow. I'm gonna say 95. So Azariah became my plug. I walked past him on Fordham Road one time, and he didn't say nothing. And everybody else was hawking, you know, socks, this and that. You know, it could be crazy on the street vending tip. And this one brother I walked by never said nothing. So that made me stop. And when I stopped, we struck up a conversation, and he sold me the Egyptian Mystery System by Bobby Hemmett on cassette. Now, this was significant for me because for years I was suppressing my spirituality. And what I mean by that is, my grandmother was heavy into the sciences, you know what I'm saying, roots and things of that nature. And she was bad at what she do, meaning she was powerful. So I had seen entities. I understood interdimensional aspects of life. And she would put me and make me a part of these rituals that took place. But I suppressed it for years because all the kids would tease me, and, you know, they thought I was crazy. I wasn't crazy. So when I heard Bobby Hemmett, he was the first one. I said, wow, there are other people out here who think like this, who talk like this. And he was from South Carolina, where my grandmother was from. So I immediately had a connection from there. So when I got up on the scene at the Dempsey and other small locations, very small crowds, but no young people. And, you know, I got involved by doing what I call meta music mixes. So I was taking hip hop beats and hooks and putting in 4 and 5 minutes of Bobby Hemmett, 4 or 5 minutes of Delbert Blair, 4 and 5 minutes of Henry DiBonato, because I was trying to curate the knowledge for a younger generation, because I was looking around like my hip hop generation need to hear this. So that's how I met Sarnetta, because Sarnetta was rolling with Khalid Muhammad at the time. And he was like, yo, bro, I love these music mixes. I need you to do one for Khalid. So I said, bet. So that's how I first got to meet Sarnetta. And, you know, it was brief, but, you know, we just kind of chopped it up a little bit. And the reason I wanted to sit down a few minutes earlier is because I don't want people to think the rifts that are in the conscious community, so forth, started 10 years ago. This stuff started way back. So I'm going to walk you guys through a couple of scenarios of how this came about. So as I became a part of the so-called conscious community, you know, I'm still was on this side of the ropes, you know, just paying my money and observing, but I wanted to be on the other side so bad because of the information that I was getting. So when I had Henry DiBonato a music mix and Phil Valentine, they liked it. You know what I mean? They wasn't really into hip hop, but they liked it. They said, listen, this is dope. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I got to get their numbers and call them from time to time and stay linked up. I did my first lecture in 1997, all by myself. I brought Big Man and them in to watch, and this was in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan on 68th Street with Henry DiBonato. And from that, we started these small classes in my apartment with Henry DiBonato, where he would come up once a week or once every 2 weeks. And we would go through candle magic, we would go through rituals, incense burning, meditation, and it was a very small group. I'm sorry, Dad, is that brother still alive, Henry DiBonato? Yes, yes, absolutely, okay. Absolutely. So he would come up from Philadelphia on the bus, I would pick him up, he would come to my crib, and it would be, because I had already had a classroom in my living room, because I used to have an after-school program to help young kids out. So it was a fitting setting to just have adults come in and sit in my classroom and have Henry DiBonato go to work. And this is 97, 96, 97, 98. And then once my son was born early, you know, he was premature, I needed the space in my living room, long story short. So I canceled those classes, but I still stayed connected in the conscious community. Now, I'm a fast forward since we're doing this in 10-year increments. In 99, 2000, there was something called the Gathering of the Masters, and that was in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not sure if you remember that, where all the masters were gonna come down, but this particular year, see, because Phil Valentine used to do the Gathering of the Masters in his home in Brooklyn, and he'd invite Al Bielek, and they would stay 24-hour sessions, just really giving it up. That's a little bit before my time. So this Gathering of the Masters was going to be the first huge conference in the conscious community, and it was, you know, people were flying in from all over the country to be here. And on the bill, this particular time was going to be Khalid Muhammad. And I say that because there was a rift. There's always a paradigm shift. So coming out of Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark was more of our history. Phil Valentine, Bobby Hemmett, Henry D. Bernardo, Delbert Blair, they were beginning to introduce the mystery. And obviously, you know, the old timers who were stuck in their ways didn't really adjust to this new form of information. You got a question?
No. Yeah.
Okay, all right. At any time, just kind of interject. So this was the first time a big conference was going to be held, and it had Henry D. Bernardo, Phil Valentine, Bobby Hemmett, and then Khalid Muhammad was going to be there. Conscious Rasta, I believe Layla Africa was there as well. Don't quote me. I was there just a long time ago. So, but word got around that Khalid was coming down there to spank Bobby Hemmett because, you know, he was the Mars man, as he would call him, and this and that. And Sonetta can attest to this when he gets on a little bit later. So, you know, it became a really big thing. And this was the first time I understood how FBI surveillance was real, because on my way down there, they took me off the train for no reason at all, the feds. And then when I got there, Khalid Muhammad showed up before his entourage, 2 days before his entourage. He sat in on everybody's lecture. He sat in on Phil, Bobby, Dr. Africa. He was taking notes. And I got to meet him, you know, without the entourage. It was a great meeting, you know, things of that nature. But when he went to the airport to pick up the Black Panthers, they marched through Atlanta, which is the largest airport I know, all in their garb and gear, and it was a sight to see. Let's put it like that. So here comes Khalid Muhammad in full uniform now with Black Panthers marching through the Atlanta airport. I think it scared the hell out of white folks. So the shit was on. So it was Fed agents everywhere. They wouldn't even let me check into my room. I was with Henry D. Bernardo, so we knew they was putting cameras in the room, and you know, a whole bunch of things were going on. Long story short, we get to this conference, and you know, after Bobby, you know, and the elders did their thing, Khalid gets up and he speaks his piece, and you know, he kind of threw Bobby under the bus a little bit, you know, by making some statements innuendo and direct about, you know, this information. And one of the statements he made was, I don't give a goddamn about Mars. And when he said that, Bobby kind of checkmated him, because Master Farad Muhammad taught Elijah Muhammad about Mars and the people who came from Mars and the language they spoke.
Bobby told him that?
Yes, yes. You know what I'm saying? So I thought the edge went to Bobby. I'm gonna be honest, you know, because the paradigm shift was already in the making. People were already intrigued by metaphysical principles. Now let's move forward. After this conference, it caused a big rift in the conscious community at that time. So everyone kind of ran in their corners, and what we know as the conscious community almost really died. Not only did Khalid Muhammad die, you know, Henry D. Bernardo was accused of certain things. Bobby Hemmett went at Henry, thought he set the whole Khalid stuff up. It was a real nasty situation. And I'm laying this down for our people in the chat so that they can understand this rift didn't start recently, or debates and all of this concept didn't start then. To me, 2000 Gathering of the Masters was interesting because that led for the first rift. Now, what happened after that, Brother Big Man, Sister Burton, they really stopped doing lectures. And along comes Chris, who was a part of my team at Eye Opener Productions with Brother Shabazz. And he had a vision, because he was watching Phil Valentine tapes, to bring Phil in for a lecture. And in doing so, he contacted Blue Pill, who knew me because I was writing for Four Corners newspaper at the time. And we set up the first meeting, and we gave that first reintroduction of Phil Valentine to a new generation, a more younger, vibrant hip hop generation. And that was a smash. And that was kind of put the train back on the track. Now,
what lecture, Black Dot? What lecture was this that you bought? Was this Book of the Earth? Was it
no, this was I forget what we called it, but it was in 2002, December 21st, 2002. It was the very first lecture me, Shabazz, and Chris had did together. We hadn't even formed Eye Opener. As a matter of fact, Shabazz had already had the company Eye Opener, but we just kind of, came together uniquely. But that was December 21st, 2002. So it was right on the solstice. And it was at the Fort Greene Senior Center. Fort Greene, those in Brooklyn know what I'm talking about. And it was a smash hit. So that became, excuse me, what we call like a rebirth, you know what I'm saying? And it was pretty much dealing with metaphysics. Now, at the time, Uptown, you had Azariah and Big Man, who was still selling tapes. You know what I mean? These were the guys who were the plug for the VHS tapes. Sarnetta came in, and as a businessman, I got to talk about Sarnetta because Sarnetta is a very polarizing figure in this whole scenario. You know what I mean? And polarizing, whether you like him or not, his imprint on what we're about to talk about is critical. Just like if you watch Sports Center, you might not like Stephen A. Smith, he's polarizing, or Skip Bayless, these are polarizing figures. So Sarnetta started getting the tapes from Azariah and Big Man, was selling them for 25, 30, and he started doubling them and selling them for 10 around the corner. You know what I'm saying? On 125th Street, Mach 125. And that was equivalent to if I'm selling blue tops for 20 and you start selling red tops for 10, that shit can create some kind of friction. But Sarnetta saw the need, in my humble opinion, to get certain information available to the people on the main strip. I say that because that's where him and Shabazz kind of met. And Shabazz was doing the very same thing, but in Brooklyn. Where Sarnetta is located on 125th Street, Bobby Hemmett, if you remember, showed a picture of somebody in the 50s or 60s in that same spot, almost doing exactly what Sarnetta was doing. Sarnetta changed the game because what he did was he put those pictures up, right? Which was traumatizing, but that was social media before social media. And when he got out there with the bullhorn and he started shouting, that was the first advent of social media as far as I was concerned, because he was getting the attention of a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? And by getting their attention, people would stop to listen. And then, he was selling the VHS tapes and things of that nature. But what happened was, what Sarnetta didn't expect, and he'll admit it if he's on his game, he was calling even the metaphysical stuff back then spookism. He was like, man, fuck that spookism, because he's cut from a different cloth. Black Power, Khalid Muhammad, but so many people uptown started asking for this information because we were doing it in Brooklyn, that he kind of had to acquiesce to the demands of the people. And that's how Sarnetta became diversified in his portfolio, if that makes any sense. So he didn't stay stuck in one thing. As the information moved, Sarnetta moved. You know what I mean? And he became a staple on 125th Street, which is the epicenter of consciousness, if you ask me. Then Sarnetta started doing major distribution, meaning he was shipping tapes throughout the country. So now in place was a distribution system, but it was still based on cassette tapes. I mean, VHS tapes. And so you had to sit there, you had to get 5 or 6 VCRs, and you had to record that in real time. You couldn't record it 2 or 3 times the speed. So it became an arduous task that he was doing. My beef with Sarnetta, I only had one beef with Sarnetta, is that he started cutting me out of the intros of the tapes we was doing down in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? He started putting his own intros on the tape. It wasn't malicious toward me, because me and Sarnetta was cool. It was a business move. But that's what caused the rift between Shabazz and Sarnetta. I'm laying all this out for the people so we begin to understand that there's always conflict and rift, or, you know, to some magnitude as we speak about the next decade. So Sarnetta and Shabazz went at it because this is Shabazz's work. He's an artist. He's filming it, and Sarnetta had a wider distribution system. And what Sarnetta was doing, he was cutting me out of history. And the reason that was important is because I was the first one to stand on those cameras, look hip hop, talk hip hop, and wear hip hop. So when these tapes was going all over the country, elders were now able to hand the tape to younger people, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Because now younger people, including yourself, you know what I mean, started gravitating to what we were doing. And in those classrooms was Adika Butler, Asir the Duke of Tears, Panic, Red Pill, Blue Pill, Rich, who's now Daddy Rich. It was so many of us who became classmates, so to speak. And we were down in Brooklyn and we were getting this information, and Uptown started doing the same, you know, exact things. So this is just kind of laying down the foundation of the era before social media, before YouTube and all these things popped up. These VHS tapes you had to take home and study. You had to take notes, and you had a small group of people around who became study groups with you in different places throughout the country. What made Eye Opener so unique, in my humble opinion, is we weren't making any money, but we all had city jobs. And I know that's almost contrary to how we're taught today about the conscious community. Shabazz worked for Verizon, brother Chris was a corrections officer, and I was a bus operator. So even when we were doing lectures at Brown Cafe, the owner said, listen, I don't want to get in your business, but how the hell y'all making money? Because I know what y'all paying us. It wasn't about the money. It was about the information. We were happy to facilitate the information. In fact, Eye Opener, we didn't change our price for $10 the longest. You know what I mean? We were able to maintain, even when we got to Long Island University or LIU, we still was able to maintain that price because we had jobs. And even when Shabazz decided to leave Verizon because the demand for his tapes was so great, you know, he was able to do so and you know, feed his family, you know, off his tapes. And I'm only laying that down because that's where the initial rift between brother Shabazz and you know, Sarnetta came into play, which led to, you know, some more rifts. And Sarnetta in particular, like I said, was the engineer of all that you see. From the beginning, he saw a marketing plan that he could put in place. When it moved from VHS to DVD, he wasted no time. He moved to DVD, so now he can burn 10 at 4, maybe 8 times the speed, get it down to the people quicker. He the first one that really put really interesting covers, so he understood marketing and promotion on all his DVDs. And then he started, you know, doing his interviews and building. And as you see, when it went to social media and YouTube, Sarnetta was one of the first to jump on that as well. So either Sarnetta ushers in new paradigms or is at the cutting edge. And I remember YouTube was only 10 minutes. If you remember, Rich, you could only upload like 10 minutes of it at a time. So there wasn't even a monetary opportunity there. There was just, you could put up snippets and you still had to go get the tape, you know.
YouTube killed the DVD era, because it's funny you talking about going from VHS to DVD. YouTube killed the DVD era.
Right. So what happens is when you was able to start uploading entire lectures up on YouTube, it killed the DVD. DVDs, no need for you to have that. Now, another interesting aspect, when it got to YouTube, now the audiences became huge. But now you can anonymously hide behind your camera. You could troll. And there was none of that when we were in each other's presence, because we could just escort you out the door. So the advent of social media allowed those who were trollers and agents to get involved on a level to create division. And so that was a very interesting part of it. And I want to say that because what we see going on in the conscious community it wasn't just happening in the conscious community. It was happening in the rap community. It was happening in politics. It was happening in sports. So this whole internet thing became a new tool for everybody, not just the conscious community. So we all were affected. I'm saying that because the conscious community gets a bad rap as if we started all the drama and the shit. No, I think the internet itself and YouTube itself and Instagram and all that you see allowed people to peek into what was sacred to us, if that makes any sense. You know, coming to the lectures, you held that sacredly because you knew not a lot of people was up on it. Not a lot of people could really gather and process this information. So it's like feeding steak to a newborn baby. And that's where I think things began to go off the rail, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Indeed. Wow. It's such an interesting history in the way you describe it. I guess because you're a speaker, it should be a documentary the way you talk about it, man.
Right.
It should be a documentary, man.
Well, I want to make sure. Go ahead.
Real quick, in the middle of all of this, Tariq Nasheed, who's not a part of the conscious community, played a huge role in exposing the conscious speakers to the world with Hidden Colors 1. I remember when that dropped, and that was like, it was a movement. That shit was huge when it dropped.
Yes.
So tell me from where you was at, what happened with consciousness when Hidden Colors 1 dropped?
Well, I felt it took somebody from the outside looking in to see the potential of what was being taught to us, because we might have been a little selfish because, come on, we all had cameras. What he did, we all could have got together, me, you, Red Pill, Blue Pill, Sarnetta, and put out a documentary of that magnitude to pay homage to our elders. But we were kind of I think we got a little lazy and lackadaisical on, some of the principles, and we were a little selfish. These were our teachers, and, they were teaching us. So Tariq Nasheed, from the outside looking in, again, seeing an opportunity, he summoned our teachers, paid them, put them on a platform, nicely chopped and edited up and packaged it. And now the world was seeing what we have been knowing for 15 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
do you remember what year that was?
That he dropped the DVD? I'm not
08 or something?
Yeah, something around that time. And some of us, we were mad at Tariq Nasheed, but I wasn't. I wasn't mad. I was upset that it wasn't us who had cameras, who had places, who had learned so much more. What Tariq Nasheed, no disrespect, was getting was the watered down version of the elders who had taught us for 8 to 10 hours at a time, real downloads. But because the paradigm shift was changing again, and digital media was coming in, and the ability to have a lot more people get this information was critical. So I applaud Tariq Nasheed in that sense, because he began to make it easier for me for people who were just coming out of organized religion and things of that nature, who were looking for what's next. I was tossing them damn shits around like Frisbees to people and letting them get that volume 1, which was baby food. But, you know, from where a lot of people was coming from, it was needed, you know?
I guess we'll talk about that in the conversation of from 2010 to 2020, because it says it came out in 2011. So his documentary was the face of consciousness for this last decade. So I guess that's something we could go into the next conversation. But I mean, wow, Doc, man, such a rich history. Like I said, I listened to Sarnetta speak a couple of weeks ago in terms of what was going on in Harlem. And it's definitely interesting hearing you saying what was going on in Brooklyn, where you was at. I didn't know you was like doing lectures as early as 95, 96. Like that's amazing, man.
Well, I was going to lectures in 95 and 96.
Okay.
And in 97, I released the Meta Music mixes. It was like 6 DVDs. I don't even have copies of them now. If somebody in the old school has copies, please.
Because I had a copy when I was young. I bought it in Harlem. I never knew it was you, bro. Never knew.
Right. So, and then there's a lot of rich history, like I said, with Sister Burt, Clemson Brown, Leon, Azariah, and Big Man. They don't get a lot of credit, but they held it down. You know, they were the first ones to usher in the metaphysical occult principles to a Black audience in our neighborhoods. And because I'm gonna be honest, what Phil and Bobby and them were teaching, which was critical to me, the most important thing they said was, don't follow me anywhere. So they were immediately telling you that hierarchy, that's an old paradigm, that we have to wait for somebody on top to bring information down. The fact that they were cursing, the fact that they had it street, it resonated with a certain demographic of people, which was young people. But the young people weren't getting it because they needed somebody to usher it in. So we became the ushers, all of us, me, you, Red Pill, Blue Pill, Adika Butler, Asiya, Panic, Tafiru, Roswell, Shabazz. We became that younger generation who understood these principles and how we can put them in motion. See, elder people out of council, the young generation has to put shit in motion. So we all kind of put it, throw Sarnetta in there. I don't know why I didn't throw him in there. We all started moving this information. And for me, the conscious community is not a destination. It is a way station, so to speak, where when you're coming out of organized religion and you need to be deprogrammed, the conscious community, because you was gonna hear the polar opposite of shit you was hearing in the church. And once you were deprogrammed, the rest of this is about your personal journey in life. So I didn't sit around in the conscious community for the next 10 years. So when we speak about the next decade, I was watching from afar, but my hands-on participation and doing lectures, that was ended for me because I needed to get into real life and deal with real life and teach people as I went. So, but another interesting aspect was King Simon, because prior to King Simon showing up, because King Simon was a promoter, you know what I'm saying? He promoted things on large scales. So he understood the intricacies on how to put on these events. He was the first one that I ever seen who did advance ticketing and, you know, so much. So I showed up at a King Simon event and said, holy shit, I had never seen that many people. You know what I mean? A max crowd for us was 100 people, you know, at LIU, maybe 150. And he was bringing massive people to hear Bobby and Phil and these lecturers. And that was good and sort of bad because a lot of them people weren't ready. You know what I mean? So now you got people in the audience who are brand new coming in on advanced levels. And I think they needed to come in step by step. So the audience began to get mixed with different people who didn't understand certain principles, who weren't used to sitting for 8 and 9 and 10 hours at a time as we were. So, but King Simon's contributions cannot be overlooked for the next 10 years because his advanced understanding on how to promote events has made this a world phenomenon now. So now when you see Dr. Umar on the Breakfast Club, or you see some of these Polite on Vlad TV and all of this kind of stuff, that is a direct result of the work we did, because our information began to spread like wildfire. You had Seti, who was a point man, sort of like Sarnetta was in his city. And we began to have point men all over the country who were getting these tapes, selling these tapes. And that's where Brother Rich from Underground Railroad saw an opportunity, was there for a very long time in these classrooms. I remember you as a young brother, and you saw an opportunity to fill a void, and history has been made.
I seen a void when Shabazz walked away for a while.
Yes.
Brooklyn was wide open.
Yes.
It was about 2005, and I approached Sarnetta, and I told Sarnetta, I'm like, yo, man, I want to do what you do. I want to, he's like, man, get the F out of here, man. You bullshit, man. This ain't for you. Get out of here.
Right,
like,
right.
I want to sell tapes, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I told him, like, yo, I'm thinking about, can I set up in Harlem? He was like, nah, nigga, you ain't set up around me. Like, nah, nigga. He was like, go create your own flow. He was like, Rich, this is my flow. Right. What you gotta do is you gotta create your own flow, brother. Absolutely. And I was like, he was like, man, go somewhere, go to Brooklyn or somewhere like that, Queens or somewhere. And then when he said that, I was like, damn, I think I might go to Brooklyn. Shabazz ain't out there. He was out there. People are conscious out there. So I went and I scouted Brooklyn. I heard about downtown Brooklyn. I've been to Brooklyn probably a handful of times in my life before. When you in Harlem,
that was interesting. Yes.
Yeah, when you in Harlem, you stay in Harlem. So, I went to downtown Brooklyn. I know I went there a couple of times when I was a teenager, and I seen the strip, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna set up right here. And that's how I started down there. And
the rest is history.
Yeah.
You filled the void. Then you began to put on events. I know you're a Virgo. I know how Virgos think. You know what I mean? You're very organized, structured. We don't need nobody's help and nobody's money. We're going to do our own damn thing. And you became a fixture that was needed in this community. So with that being said, I know we're going to take that first little break. Yeah, I wanted to put that into the record book so people understand when you see debates and you see riffs, the conscious community didn't start that. I think the internet had a lot to do with agent provocateurs being able to throw a stone, pull their hand back, the media wave of us, using social media to hype each other up. So don't blame the conscious community but we became a victim of certain things that we should have knew better. So as we come into the new paradigm, 2020, we need to have corrective behavior if we want to sustain or reinvent what it is that we do, because it may be time for us to reinvent what we do because of, some things that have taken place.
Indeed, we're gonna end this, family. Once again, like I said, I'm getting ready to do the 2010 to 2020 Decade in Review with Brother Black Dot, Sarnetta, Red Pill, Blue Pill, myself. So that's Moo Productions, Know the Ledge Productions, House of Consciousness, and Underground Railroad. For the
Eye-opener.
Yeah,
Eye-opener.
Eye-opener, yeah. So for the platforms that's been around for decades, some older than others, but we have been around in the game. So I've seen so many people come and go in my short time here, Doc. So many people come and go. I want to tell the people.
You know how many I've seen.
I want to tell people a real quick story before we end this and get ready for the next segment. My first lecture that I did in Brooklyn, I did it with Sarnetta. We brought Brother Bobby Hemmett in. Real quick story about Bobby, man. I used to call Bobby here and there on the phone, just to say what's up and to tell him I'm sending him a donation or whatever, because he would leave his number at the lecture sometimes. So I called him one time. I said, all right, yo, Brother Bobby, I'm getting ready to send you a donation. So I sent Brother Bobby a donation. I sent him $300 because I remember I was big on three. So it was 3 ones, 100, 100. I sent him 3 $100 bills. I remember like it was yesterday. And he used to tell us to wrap it in aluminum foil. He say, you got to wrap it in aluminum foil so they won't detect it and this and that. So he had me wrap it, money in aluminum foil, put it in an envelope. So I did that. I sent him the 300. And along with 300, I put a note in there. And at that time, I had the book As a Man Thinketh. So I put a quote from the book As a Man Thinketh. So I sent it to Bobby. Bobby gets it a couple of days later. He calls me mad as hell. I'm like, he's like, yeah, man, I got your money, man. I appreciate it, man. But what the note was about? And he thought I was trying to talk shit because I was telling him about, As a Man Thinketh, and it was some law of attraction type stuff. So
right.
He thought I was trying to be funny or something. He took it the wrong way. And me and Bobby got in an argument on the phone. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, yo, I admire and respect this man. I just sent him money. Like, what's wrong with this dude? Like, this dude is, you know what I'm saying? So me and Bobby we talk. And then out of nowhere, Bobby said, you know what? Shit, I'm wrong, man. He said, shit, I'm wrong, man. You know what, man? You's a real nigga. You didn't back down. He said, you's a real nigga. You didn't back. And we just, it was like a switch. It did out of nowhere. Me and Bobby, we just started talking, and we was cool as a mom from that point. Just cool, man, cool.
Absolutely.
When we went to the lecture, he stayed at my crib. This is when my mother had just passed away. I was living with my girl. It was just me and my girl. Bobby came, stayed with us. This is when I was in Harlem. And we was just cool. We was kicking it the whole time. I picked him up from the airport, took him to East West Bookstore on 14th Street. And we was just vibing, man. And from that first argument I had with Bobby, we just been cool as shit ever since, man. So that was just my introduction to lectures and to one of the craziness of the lecturers. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, Bobby thought I was a federal agent the very first time he met me. Because I had been listening to his tapes and this and that. I was so excited. I was wet behind the ears when Azariah gave a lecture. I was the first nigga there. I showed up when Bobby showed up. I didn't know black people showed up late. And he started looking at me like it was, I had my girl with me too. And then I could tell by his conversation, he started talking about, because there'd be a lot of agents around. And he was looking at me the whole time. And I was like, yo, bro, come on, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't do that to me. But we wound up smoothing it over. And, the rest is history. And that lecture was called Making Sense of the Madness. I think that was in 95 or 96. And if you watch me and wifey in the front row, we are in stitches. This is my first time seeing them live. So I know what it's like when people come to the first lecture to see somebody they respect and admire live. It's a total different experience. So another great story from Bobby.
Definitely. With that being said, I want to thank Black Dot. We are wrapping this up. Dot. I'm going to see you in about 10 minutes. Family, I'm going to end this segment. I'm coming back with the Pills, Sarnetta, and Black Dot. And we're going to have a deep conversation about the last decade of consciousness, family. So stay tuned. Make sure you come back, family. I'm going to see you in a second.
Peace.
Peace.